This regular meeting of the Villa Park Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Orlowski?
Here.
Gatto?
Here.
Jarrett?
Here.
Lanenga?
Yes.
Rickel?
Here.
We have a quorum. First agenda item is approval of minutes for January 11th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of January 11th, 2018.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Let's vote. Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Orlowski?
Yes.
Gatto?
Yes.
Jarrett?
Yes.
Lanenga?
Yes.
Rickel?
Yes.
That is approved. So we're going to move into we're going to move into our first petition, and I think it's the only petition for tonight, which is PZ 18-0001, variance from required rear yard setback from 40 feet to 25 feet for property located at 451 North Addison Road. Petitioner is Frank Lagambina. Petitioner here this evening? Okay. Please come forward. So we'll need you to state your name and address for the record, and then be sworn in.
Frank Lagambina, 22W 601 Austrian Road, Glen Ellyn, Illinois, 60137.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. So you may proceed.
What we're proposing today is a variance for a reduction of the rear yard setback from 40 feet to 25 feet. The purpose for doing this is so that we can put a new construction home on the property and have an attached side load garage. The benefit of doing that is we're going to cover a smaller percentage of the surface area of the property by doing that than if we were to do a detached garage and have a driveway that went all the way to the back of the property. It'll also help reduce congestion in the backyard area there. Plus, I'm sure you guys have a copy of the topographic survey of the property, but by doing this, it will allow us to put a yard drain in the back there at our own expense, tying it into the village storm sewers, which will help alleviate any water runoff that we may run into in that area. But by granting us the variance today, we will help reduce the amount of runoff that is generated to begin with.
Okay. Anything else you want to add at this point?
Not at this point, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay. We'll get there. So thank you. So we're going to move on to the next. We follow the agenda that I think it was available out front. We'll move into staff input now, and then there'll be a chance for you to speak again.
Good evening. This is a variance request for a rear yard setback. The lot itself is on the smaller side. The property is zoned R2. Normally we require a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet. But given the time when this was platted, zoning was different. It allowed for much smaller lots. As the zoning has changed, we allow development on lots that are smaller than what the code says if they were properly approved and subdivided at some point in time, and then that they meet all of our required setbacks. In this particular instance, the depth of the lot is such that when you apply the required front yard setback of 40 feet, given the existing development pattern on this stretch of Addison Road, and the required rear yard setback of 40 feet, doesn't leave a lot of area to build a home with an attached garage, which is what Mr. Lagambino wants to do. But given the fact that it is an attached garage rather than a detached, there's no reason to run a driveway all the way around the house into the rear yard like virtually every other home on this block. It didn't come out that well on your map in your packet, but virtually every lot on this block has a garage in the rear yard. And what that has done, given the size of the lots in this area, which are smaller than the typical, the lot coverages basically exceed just a little over 50%. which, as you know, the more lot coverage you have, the more runoff you have, which for our village we're always very concerned about. The petitioner's request has a lot coverage just under 35%. So it's has much less impervious surface than most of the homes on this block, in this entire neighborhood, basically. Additionally, the fact that there will not be a detached garage in the backyard does mean that there will be more usable yard space in the rear yard. And as Mr. Lagambina stated, he'll have the ability to put a drain back there, but it will also give usable space for the owner of that home to utilize the backyard as opposed to it all being garage and driveway. This was properly published in the February 19th Daily Herald. And if the Planning and Zoning Commission were to entertain the motion, they could approve application PZ 18001 for a request that includes a variation to the required rear yard setback from 40 feet to 25 feet for purposes of constructing a new single-family home at 451 North Addison Road, with the following conditions in there too. The first is that the proposed single-family home be located as shown on the detailed grading plan, which was included in your packet, prepared by JGN Consulting Engineers and dated January 4th, 2018. Second condition is that the elevation of the new home be generally as shown on the elevation plan page identified as sheet A4, is prepared by Ruben L. Anastasio and Associates Limited and dated February 5th, 2018, with a finding of fact that was included in the staff memo dated February 12, 2018, that such variation meets the standards enumerated in Article 6.7.b of Appendix C of the Municipal Code, Village of Villa Park Basic Zoning Ordinance. With that, my presentation is complete, and I'll answer any questions that the Commission may have.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in our petitions, we go to questions from the public, or public participation. So are there any members of the audience, of the public this evening wishing to speak in regards to this petition? I'm seeing no one. So we're going to move into questions from commission members. Commissioners, questions?
Is there a water problem in this area?
Yeah, so is there in the neighborhood, is there known to be an existing problem with runoff, flooding backyards?
I don't know of any specific problems that we have with drainage in the area, but I do know on this particular lot there is a depressional storage area that will be addressed as part of the development of the site.
Other questions?
I don't.
I saw in the pictures, it looks like you've got silt fence up on the site. I live not too far from there, and I walked past there, and it looked to me like there maybe been some excavation already started, so.
No excavation has been started. No work has begun.
Okay.
Other than the silt fence.
Just the
being put
silt
up.
fence around the perimeter? Okay,
Yes.
all right. And then, I understand about the decrease in pervious area as one reason, but what are the other reasons for looking at this kind of a garage situation? Because, I mean, it makes for a lot longer of a structure than it would have to be.
It does, but the biggest benefit, obviously, most of the people who have homes on this particular street have a 9-foot wide driveway that goes all the way to the back. So a lot of people are forced to back out onto Addison Road there. The benefit of putting a front side load garage is when they back out of the garage, they'll be able to pull nose out onto Addison Avenue, and they'll be able to pull nose in as they pull in.
Okay. So yeah, I get how that's an advantage then of a side load garage, but you could have made a decision to more engage the garage with the house, thereby making the whole structure shorter, so you wouldn't need such an extreme variation for the rear yard.
We would not be able to do that with a side load garage. We've
I understand. It would have to be more of a head end, but it could still be an attached garage, right? And it could be still located on that site. It would just be engaged more with the house, and you wouldn't need so much of a variation. Maybe you'd need a variation, but it's a big variation that you're looking for. So
It is, but what we're looking to do is, when you drive up and down the street there, it's not common to see a 16-foot wide white door facing Addison Avenue. In my opinion, it would take away from the character of the neighborhood, having a giant garage door eating up half of the front of the buildable area of the lot.
okay, but we're still talking about a garage taking up most of the visual appearance of the house from the street.
It is, but you're not seeing the door.
Yeah, okay. I get that, but you're seeing the two windows, and then this is the structure. This structure is the first thing that you're noticing, and the house is actually pushed back, and the front door is pushed back. So I'm just wondering about why the decisions that are made about the design of the house are why you need the variation. It's not the lot that's creating this.
It's not the lot, it's being able to address the not encroaching onto the amount of impervious area that we're creating, trying to make as compact a structure as possible. And really the driveway is, what we're trying to minimize. Obviously the garage is the same size whether we attach it to the house or whether we put it in the backyard. So really the best place to cut down on the impervious area is on the driveway size itself.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other questions from commissioners? I'm just gonna, any guys gonna have any questions or no? No?
I have a discussion question.
Okay, so discussion. So, Mr. Gambian, if you want to go ahead and make any closing comments, you can do so now. If you want anything else you want to add. Okay, thank you. And then, from the public perspective, there's an opportunity, one last opportunity, if anyone would like to speak in regards to this petition. Yes, I see one hand up there. So, sir, please come forward. Anyone else would like to speak? So please come forward, and you'll need to be sworn in, and then before you speak, state your name and address for the record.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Nicholas Schreiber. I live 443 North Addison Road in Villa Park.
Great, thank you.
I do. So I live right next door to the lot that is going to be built on. My major concern is which side of the lot, north or south, is the driveway going to be put on?
From the diagram, the plan diagram that we have, it looks like it's on the south, right?
It's on the
And
south
the
side.
petitioner just, have you seen this?
I have not. I apologize.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So that's the site plan, or I should say, the proposed site plan.
Is this utilizing,
Yeah, sure.
is this utilizing the current driveway that's there now?
Or current curb cut, is that
Yeah,
really
the
what the
current
question, the
cut
current curb
driveway.
cut? Yeah, please.
It will utilize a portion of it, but the curb cut that is there is much larger than what we need right now, and part of it will be closed off.
Okay.
And the remaining portion, right now the curb cut straddles the lot line
Yeah.
between this lot and this gentleman's lot. and we're proposing moving it completely onto our lot.
Okay, so it'll become sort of two separate curb cuts with space between. Go
My
ahead.
curb cut for my lot is on the south side of my lot as well.
Yeah, this is just a big curb cut.
This is
Oh.
one, it's about 80% onto my lot and 20% onto,
So you're going to fix that
Yes,
situation?
we're proposing fixing that.
just because a lot of the times, the people that have came in to put up the silt fence, and I know that there's a trailer parked in there, everything ends up being driven over my lot to get into the other lot. So that is a concern of mine throughout the building process of all of this.
So, could you maybe address that on how you can mitigate that situation?
Yeah, the way we'd address that situation is, right now, there's, in the ground where we have the silt fence right now, there's actually, like an old driveway kind of buried underneath the ground there. And in the process of doing this, we're proposing pulling that out, but what we would do is, we will do the curb cut first. So we would
Okay.
get, a construction entrance on our property.
Okay. Okay. Great, thank you. Anything else, sir?
Concerns, questions?
Would that,
Okay.
I have a question. So that would be entailing taking care of the curbs, everything, the breezeway, and all the aprons as well when you put the new driveway in?
Yes.
So you'd be replacing and taking out, redistributing the dirt and everything? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir, for coming up. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing then, and we're going to move into discussion by commission members, which I've heard that there may be some.
I'm looking at it, we're looking for a 15-foot variance in the back. And it almost seems like if you were to put more of the house behind the garage, you would eliminate that.
That's kind of what my questions were, is there's design decisions being made that are causing a very large variation.
Yeah.
And to me, the best argument for it was how busy Addison Road can be and the fact that you could turn around because it's a side-load garage. But I don't know that it's persuasive to me to have that long of a house on that short of a lot
Well, I mean, and
and give
What
that
am I
great of a
missing?
variation.
you could, there's so much side yard right here
Yeah.
that some of that could be utilized and you wouldn't need to have the variation at all. I mean, you could still have your front-load garage
Yeah,
without, because the only variation we're seeking is that rear yard setback.
correct. Everything else is conforming, even though, as staff indicated, this lot is actually below the standard, but because it was legally platted, all the petitioner needs to do is meet all the setback requirements for this district, and then, he wouldn't even need to be here tonight. It would be, lot of record, compliant construction, so we're only here to talk about the rear yard setback, which is, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask for. That's what I struggle with. I get
I mean,
some
I
of the
see
other
he's-
arguments, but
I see he's not, there's still a lot of green space even though so we're not covering up too much of the yard.
At 7,500 square feet on a 50-foot wide lot, that figures you're going to have 150 foot of depth. And most of our lots that are 50 feet wide have that or more. A lot of them push 200 or deeper. So it is a shallow lot. I get that.
Yeah, by 20 feet, so that would give him a setback.
Yeah, without seeing the floor plan, I personally don't
There's-
understand the design.
there is a floor plan.
Oh, is it? I didn't see it in here.
there is a floor plan.
I looked for it and missed it.
No,
Oh, it's just smaller than that.
I have to say thank you for giving us a floor plan, because we don't always get that, so thank you. So there's a dining room here, and there's other design decisions that could be made.
Yeah.
it's a reasonable house, it's just that it gets to be very long with that added-on garage, and that's what, for me, is hard to say, then let's give you a big rear yard variation. Other thoughts?
You know, it is rear yard, so I'm kind of, you know, it is a short lot.
And behind there, there's a garage on the property behind.
Yeah.
So the neighbor behind would typically be seeing a garage. It's the neighbor on the other side.
The garage could be a,
This neighbor. That, you know, he's.
and garage is permitted in rear setback, right, Patrick? Is
Oh,
that
yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Detached garages are permitted.
Detached garages.
Is there
permitted
any
with-
setback required at all for detached garages
Yeah, it's like
from the rear?
Yeah,
3 feet or 5 feet.
No, it's 5 feet.
5
Now, it's 5 feet for side lot lines and typically 10 feet for rear lot lines.
So, it's, I see what you're saying in that, from a design standpoint, there are probably ways to bring that closer and
Yep.
theoretically not need a variance or as much as a variance, but
I could see some variation, but it's a lot. That's what I keep I'm struggling with that. Because I think there's other decisions that could be made.
it could also be a two-car garage, 5 feet from the corner inside, and
Mm-hmm.
driveway along the full length, which isn't exactly attractive either.
Well, but that district, as they're rightly pointing out, that street is pretty consistent. I can
Yeah.
think of one other house maybe that's further south of this that has an attached garage. But it's only one that I can think of.
That's what I'm looking at right here, is every
Yeah.
house almost within 4 blocks,
Yeah.
either north or south or east or west, they're all
So for
they're
me,
all
it's-
detached, it all
right.
fits.
So it's a double thing for me. It's the even though it's a long driveway, I get that on these other lots. From what I see from the street, it's all doors and windows, and the garage is in back, and there's spaces in between. It's very. This is gonna be the different house on the block,
That's the problem that I have with it.
and it needs a big variation. So.
You know, I don't see the problem. I mean, it's different. I wish it was a different design, but I think we're not covering up, you know, I mean, the rear yard setback is not as sacred as the front, especially with all the garages back there.
That's where I would be too. It's a long way from the nearest house. There's a garage just 8 foot from the property line. Doesn't seem like it would make a visual
Yeah,
issue.
think about the neighbor on the south side, though, that in his backyard, he's looking,
He had no concerns.
I get it,
But you also
but
have,
he may sell someday.
I also wasn't able to really look at the
Yeah,
full plan.
yeah.
but you also have, who's ever gonna be living in this house is also looking at garages from the back of their house, you know, they're spot on the garages.
Right, yeah, no question. That's kind of how it works. And any other thoughts down there, Mr. Jackson, or Mr. Jarrett?
Well, it is rear yard setback, and there's garages going to be both sides of the house, essentially. And I mean, I agree with everything that's been said about the layout. You know, they could go a little more on the side yard, but shorter lot. I mean, I see what they're doing with some of the other buildings or the other houses that they've been building. You know, that's an attractive feature, having a side load garage. So I'm kind of torn. I'm leaning towards maybe it's not that big of a deal to have a rear setback that's
Okay.
out of variance.
I agree with that.
Okay. Seems like
Two of us at least.
I think there's two of us that don't really like it, and I think there's probably 4 that feel like rear yard setback. If you're gonna give a variation, a rear yard setback is the place to do it, right? That's, yeah.
Especially when you have a lot that's already 19 foot short.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's 19 foot short.
You know, I have a question for the petitioner. Why are you choosing to seek a variance when really, if you did a design change and brought more of the house behind the garage, you know, you wouldn't lose any square footage? Why this design? Why seek a variance?
When you bring part of this design behind the garage, so this is a split level home, very typical, you know, in the neighborhood here. When you bring a portion of it behind the home, there's not a way to get from the main floor, the entry to the house, to the backyard without having to come out the sidewalk all the way around the house to get to the backyard. On this design here, we've got a door that comes right off the kitchen dining area that goes right into the backyard, which would be important for families, you know, who want to have an eye on their kids and be able to.
Side yard. Doesn't that go to the side yard?
Yeah, it goes right to the side yard, but you have direct access from that side yard to the back.
Okay.
If we were to move part of the house to that area, we would have to relocate that door someplace else. You see what I'm
So it's
talking
a
about?
split level with the higher part in the back.
Yeah, it's a split level.
Yeah.
I've seen the same type of design with the split level with the garage in the rear. And it's on a busy street. And they've got a huge concrete apron back there for a turnaround because they're on a busy street, so.
You'd be over 75 with the driveway. You'd be covering too much lot.
You really could almost rotate the house 90 degrees and it would still fit on the lot. Almost.
No.
That's 43 feet wide.
But you'd lose your elevation. You'd have to have part of it behind the garage and it wouldn't work.
Right.
Well,
Any other discussion?
yeah. If every house on the street was like this, it wouldn't be the end of the world, you know? If every house was trying to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, well, where I have a problem is that all the other houses, as far as we know, don't need this large of a rear yard setback easement. They're the same size of lots. So they can meet all the zoning requirements on the same size of lot. So this is not a unique lot. And so it's like, what's the hardship? And I personally come back to the hardship is that the design, the house design. And you could still meet some of these other, goals petitioner has by changing the design. So like I said, I do agree with the reasoning of the side load garage because of the backing out of Addison Road. I think that's a very valid concern. It is, I live very near there, and it is, I've seen people try to get in and out of their driveways along there, and it's difficult.
Yeah, especially,
Yeah.
when
Yep.
the street's full of, train traffic.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. But again, I get that reason, but I can still see design changes that could be made where you'd be having less of a variation request.
I agree, but I almost think it's unfair to say that he can't build on the back when everybody else has a garage
But
where
that's-
he's, I know what the rules are kind of,
If you have a detached garage,
you're allowed to do it. It's
right,
kind
it's
of
an
like.
allowed encroachment, and that's the way the whole village has been laid out from the very beginning.
Yeah,
Detached
it's-
garages and encroachment in the rear yard.
Mhm.
Because the idea, that concept we've been talking about, no one wants to see a bunch of garage doors on little, smaller houses and a big garage door that's as wide as the house.
Right.
So that's why they were platted. I mean, we've even had developers come in and do new houses with detached garages so they could, right? Down in the south part of town, there's been a few of those have been done, so. So if there any other discussion, or should we just take a crack at taking a vote on it? See how it comes out.
Let's take a crack at it.
All right. So, motion?
Just react.
I'll make a motion to approve application PZ 180001 for a request that includes a variation to required rear yard setback from 40 feet to 25 feet for purposes of constructing a new single-family home at 451 North Addison Road with the following conditions. One, that the new proposed single-family home be located as shown on the detailed grading plan as prepared by JGM Consulting Engineers dated January 4th, 2018. Two, that the elevation of the new home be generally as shown on the elevation plan page identified as sheet A4 as prepared by Ruben L. Anastasio and Associates LTD and dated February 15th, 2018, with the finding of fact that such variation meets the standards enumerated in Article 6.7.b of Appendix C of the Municipal Code, Village of Villa Park Basic Zoning Ordinance.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
There's a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I'll vote for it.
Commissioner Orlowski.
No.
Commissioner Gatto.
Yes.
Commissioner Jarrett.
Yes.
Commissioner Leninga.
Yes.
Commissioner Rickel.
Yes.
And I too vote no, but it passes, and we're a recommending body. So our recommendation to the village board will be to approve your variation request. Now, the village board can either accept, reject, or modify our recommendation. Okay? Thank you. All right. That was our hearing for this evening. The next agenda item is continued discussion on Chapter 5, Animals and Fowls, and parentheses, chicken. So,
We missed the last game.
I sure did.
Made
I was not here for the last fowl discussion.
Yes. So I'll try to bring you up to speed then.
Please do.
The village has been approached by some homeowners about the potential of being able to keep chickens at their residence. Currently, the village code specifically prohibits the keeping of chickens in the village. But there are certainly a number of communities in and around Chicago and across the United States that have adopted ordinances to allow homeowners to keep chickens under certain rules and regulations. I provided you with a number of those communities and ordinances that have been drafted in those communities that would allow it. And we're here tonight to see whether or not it's something that this commission wants to see forwarded on, and what, if any, regulations you want to impose. Do we want to create some sort of pilot program? Do we want to put specific limitations on it? That's why we're here tonight. So with that, I open it up to any questions that the commission may have.
Okay. Questions, discussion, I guess?
Well, I would say that when we came into the discussion a couple months back, I wouldn't say dead set against it, but was certainly leaning away from it. The more I've looked at the ordinances, the more I've read about it, especially when you start reading the communities around us, and one of the biggest surprises they've had is that nobody's doing it. I mean, the number of people who's doing it is rather small. It's not like, I think, was it Elgin said they had like 10 people or something like that apply for permits.
13 applied, 11 granted.
I'm less adverse to it than I was 2 months ago. Let's just put it at that.
Okay, that's a ringing endorsement.
I would be, honestly, a well-crafted ordinance, with the right permitting, and especially for any structures that were built, I could probably get behind.
Okay.
I would rather see it permitted and monitored than under the radar.
Elgin has a license and a permit
Yeah,
required.
a lot of the communities require license, and then they require building permits for the coops that have to be built. And I believe all of them require you to have a coop, you have to have chickens.
And some require training as well.
Training the chicken?
They're good. If it
One
can't
of
do
the-
3
Oh,
tricks,
the-
it's out.
And all the ones that I saw, except for one that I don't remember specifically which one, but all of them require your chickens to be enclosed. They can't be loose in your backyard. There was one we kind of joked about last time, that they could be loose, but they had to be tethered if they were loose. And that's just a funny visual.
Tethered and trained. Yeah. So my sister has a chicken coop, and I can't see that in one of our small lots in Villa Park. Personally, I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't get there.
Well, I
Not
guess-
not knowing what goes on with her chicken coop.
Yeah, and I mean, we even,
that's one of our things. We do have small lots, but we also have some very, very big lots.
Yeah, we do. So my question's going to be: you've got to build a structure. Do I get a garage, a shed, a house? Right? Does this
right.
count in as a structure within all the other requirements? So then I might not be able to have a shed because I've got a chicken coop instead.
I would think it would need to count against maximum lot coverage.
Right. So to me, that's all part of this. Is we have a lot. You know, the majority of our
Because
lots
you're
are actually
creating an
smaller.
impermeable surface.
Right. As we just talked tonight, we do have a lot of lots that are small.
The way different communities have dealt with it, some of them require a certain distance from a lot line.
Setback
But there are
requirements.
others that require explicitly a specific distance from any other residential unit, which is a little different, but
And I
I think
saw
it was
that.
Naperville that was like I think it was Naperville. 200 feet, I think, from any other residential unit.
I mean, that would pretty much eliminate
Yeah,
most
so
of the...
It wouldn't even be able to
Right.
be built in Villa Park then. But I think a distance away from neighbors is good. I saw that in one. It's like you know, there can be no perceptible odor at the property line. How does that? How do you?
That's fairly subjective.
Yeah. How do you do that? That's kind of what I was.
Well, you know, in like Elgin, they say chicken coops must be at least 25 feet from your neighbors and not visible from the street. So 25 feet from your neighbors, that would rule out 90% of my
of our
lots,
lots.
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah. Because you
There's
got a lot of
different-
50-foot lots.
So, I mean, here,
There's different ways to approach it.
I mean, the thing is, you could ordinance them, you could accept it and then have all the regulations as such where, there's 1 or 2 lots that could have chicken coops, or you could just say, we're done.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't, if you're gonna do it, you can't make it so that
Right.
Nobody
only
can have
3
it.
lots in the village can have it. That's,
Right,
No, I agree, otherwise why
that's,
don't
well,
do it.
it's, I think you could,
yeah.
we are
So-
exposed the village to legal issues, if you ask me, if you do that. So it's, you gotta make it so it's reasonable.
And then that means that you'd have to rewrite something like Elgin, because you couldn't do 25 from every neighbor. You'd eliminate 80% of the houses. I almost think it's one of those things where maybe this isn't the town for that. If other towns have these guidelines and we would have to reduce the requirements in order for us to have them,
I think
why would we do that? I'm sure they put a lot of thought into
Yeah.
odor and noise and, visibility and things like that if our lots are too small.
I had a question for Patrick. Is the village planning on educating staff to regulate chickens?
It would ultimately depend on what regulations were established and what enforcement would need to be done. I can tell you right now that my staff is pretty overwhelmed with the existing workload. And
that's a
to
concern.
throw something else like this would just mean something else would have to be neglected, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and that's a major concern that I have, because it seems like we've got staff, they're out there, they're working, they're doing the best they can, but it's hard to even keep up with just the property maintenance issues that we all see around the village. And to me, that's got to be the number 1 priority for those folks.
Yeah, I don't agree with you.
You don't agree with me?
No, I think staff, does have their concerns, but it's kind of like if this were a life-saving thing, we'd be like, well, staff up for it, So we can't say we're, sorry, we're overworked, we can't accommodate, a trend. It's not, not having the staff is not a reason. It's a concern, but it shouldn't have any weight.
Well, but, so then the recommendation, if we come up with an ordinance for this, we all think that we should have one, it would also have to say, and you should appropriate dollars for staff so you can enforce it. Otherwise, we don't recommend you have another set of ordinances to enforce that we can't afford to enforce.
My thought on that issue, and that was one of my initial concerns too, was just that, I've talked to a handful of people in other communities, and I read what staff pulled up, and we're talking towns with considerably more population than this that have 10, 15, sometimes not even 10 permits.
Right.
And they've been doing it for a year or more.
But you're also talking about towns like Elgin that have many more staff available too. They have more
Right, but that's what I'm
dollars.
saying. They've had 10 permits for chicken coops is a drop in the bucket.
I understand.
It's not like there's gonna suddenly be 1,000 people applying for chicken coops.
Yeah, I just know
So-
that I can go anywhere in the village and I can see serious property maintenance issues that I think staff's probably issuing tickets, but,
Well, it's, going back to the light staff, if they,
That's been a
If-
complaint for the 15 years I've lived here, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if one person pulls permits, it doesn't mean that, there's not going to be 50 people with fowl in their yard, And then we go back to how do you enforce it? How do you tell somebody they have to get a license for a chicken and not for, the neighbor's
No,
Two
the same way
dogs,
you
you
tell them
know.
they have to get a permit to build a shed in their backyard. Some will, some won't.
That's right.
Hopefully, most do.
Yeah.
So in the last, when this was opened up, this discussion was opened up, did we have members of the public that came up and spoke? or-
Large number. Some of them are here tonight.
Okay.
We probably had 10, 12 people here, something like that. No one came out and spoke against it. Everybody that came out and spoke was strongly in favor of at least, further discussion. We talked about the possibility of a pilot program.
Which is what Elgin did, right?
With the understanding that if you sign up for the pilot program, and if we decide against it at the end of whatever the length of time is, then the chickens gotta go. And that they would
Chickens
sign
gotta go.
agreements and contracts and all that. We had a very robust, about 2-hour discussion on chickens.
Did you?
Yes, we did.
So what was the thought process at the end of that? Was there a consensus from commission members at that point?
Consensus at that time was for staff to work with the members of the community to pull together some additional regulations and maybe potentially design a pilot program
Okay.
or ordinance.
I like the bees thing in here. I think the hives are a great idea. I'm all for the beehives.
Yeah, I know, so am I, but not the chickens, I don't know why.
I'm not so, I'm kind of with them. So is that consensus here?
How many
So-
people are really gonna have chickens? I agree with Jason. It's not gonna be a ton of people, so,
I don't think it'll be a ton either.
yeah. I mean, I'm kind of for it.
I got another, we'll just say we're gonna open up that Pandora's box.
Uh-oh.
It's a farm animal, correct?
Well, that,
It's a
there's specific thing in Elgin about defining, it's very limiting.
So then what if next month somebody,
Wants a cow?
I want goats.
Then you wanna mow your lawn.
Fainting ones.
So you don't have to mow anymore?
Yeah, goats would be good. The fainting goats.
Yes, specifically.
I want a potbelly pig then, if you're getting a goat.
And I would,
But the slippery slope
No.
argument goes for all legislation.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you could make that for anything.
Yep.
If we do that, then that's gonna allow that.
So then, in staff in assembling these ordinances, did what the commission asked, which is put together, see if we can take a look at it. Seems like that there are other cities, villages that have taken a good stab at this and come up with a set of regulations, and we're looking at, we'd still need to modify this.
Yeah, and
to me,
I think there are
Villa
some
Park.
communities out there that are smaller lot communities. I think Oak Park
Okay?
permits them, I believe.
Really?
Somebody mentioned that. I didn't look into them specifically.
Yeah,
but-
Oak
Western
Park allows
Springs.
them.
Well, in reading Elgin, it's talking about, it's got the minimums, but then it also says, we're only gonna, I think it even limited the number of licenses that they'll give out. And then it said preference will be given towards those with, larger lots or special screening or,
Well, I know some of the people that came in actually are on some of the larger lots in town where,
yeah, so I could see us setting it up that way where there's some minimums that you just can't, be less than, but also maybe having a limited number of licenses available at any one time, and then having that preferential, but preference is going to be shown to those that have larger lots, because that's what we're talking about really, is mitigating any disruption for neighbors, right? Smell, sound, and that's going to have to be distance.
yeah, and
I just gotta say this, smell and sound, if we're worried about that, we've got a bigger issue with some of the animals that are in Villa Park. I just gotta say that, I'm sorry. I don't think chickens are gonna be any worse than a big dog.
Well,
I would far rather have a couple
A
of
neighbor that
chickens
doesn't
than a-
clean up
than a
after
big
their dog.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be walking in
I
the
know.
front yard. I'm not gonna have to clean up after any chickens in my front yard.
Then
I'm
we
not
have to
gonna
be
have to worry about a
I
chicken
can tell you
attacking
the
my kid.
guinea
you know?
hens will,
So-
they make noise all night long. So we gotta rule those
Well,
out.
yeah, certain breeds will be unacceptable, I agree with that, you know, we're looking for chick.
I agree with you. I have a neighbor dog
eggs.
that
So-
can bark all night long and.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of agree, but I disagree that, you know, we should be looking at that when, you know, the real issue is, you know, do we just not want to allow it, do we just not like it? You know, what really is the underlying issue of what we're afraid of? I think it's the fact that, you know, people will get lax with the rules, so we just need to have some stringent rules in place, we need to have a pilot program, and as long as they're enforced, I don't see a problem with it.
For me, the issue is less about the chickens and more about the enclosures and how and where they're designed. Where they're designed, how they're designed.
Yeah, well, go online, check
because-
it out. I've been looking at chicken coops.
Yeah, there's one of these packets up here, some chicken coops that are nicer than my house.
I doubt that.
Better windows.
No variance for you.
That's right.
But, you know, if you're talking about a plywood lean-to built up against my fence that my neighbor builds to house their chicken coops, then I'm not happy about that.
Yeah, right. No,
If they
well,
if they have a nice coop in the middle of their yard and,
Right.
you know,
they take care of
75
it.
feet from my house and 10 feet from each lot line, and
Right. So,
Let me ask this. Total city boy question. People want chickens for the eggs or
yes.
for the chicken, to eat the chicken?
no.
For the eggs.
For the eggs.
Eggs only.
If you're gonna eat the chicken, you just need to have to kill some more and then.
Most ordinances do not allow the slaughtering of chickens.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. So
At all.
what do you,
They
how long do
explicitly
they
prohibit
live?
5 years of that. Sorry, I've got friends with farm in Indiana.
So 5 years?
Little park.
Big
As I
lot.
say, I think the number I was reading was like 5 to 7 is usually.
So what do you
When
do
they
at
stop
the end of the
producing.
Unless you
5
have
years? Do you have
coyotes
to
or
take it to a
dogs,
vet
then
and
it
get
can be
it
shorter.
euthanized? Do you have to relicense new chickens? I mean,
Well, they stop
No.
producing eggs
It's not-
and then they die
So then you eat
at some
them.
point.
I grew up on a farm, they usually just, like, don't wake up one day and you just deal with it. Get a new chicken.
I mean, I'll admit this to everybody here, I'm already throwing chicken parts away in my garbage weekly, so. And I don't own chickens, so I'm not too worried about it.
You have chickens, but they're in your freezer.
That's right.
So my perspective on this is that there's just a bunch of unknowns. Like, we can go back and forth about the unknowns of this whole proposal for a long time. But I think that the pilot plan would actually be a good test run to grab some lessons learned and to kind of figure out how this is going to actually work. So we can make some more educated decisions about if it's reasonable or not.
Well, but if there's consensus that this commission would have a vote to recommend an ordinance to the village board, then I think we need to give staff direction on, they've come out, they've given us 2 or 3 here, other ordinances. What would you want to see in an ordinance? That's what staff needs to know. What do you want to see in that ordinance? Obviously, we've talked about lot coverage. We've talked about this has got to be part of the calculation. And you may not get everything you want if you want a chicken coop. You may have to forego a shed or whatever, you know, depending on your lot. What are the minimum setbacks that you want to see? Pilot program, I think, is for sure that you'd want to try a pilot program. Is there a limited number of licenses or not? And
do you have to have a fenced yard with a certain amount of screening?
do you have to have a fenced yard? Right. I would say you'd have to have a fenced yard. That would be my preference.
If you didn't have a chicken run, that would be a preference, yeah, but if you have a chicken run, why do you need a fenced yard,
Yeah.
fenced in yard?
Because,
Run. Because I don't want to see it.
yeah.
Precisely.
I don't want to see it in your backyard.
Well, what kind of fence do you need then? So you want a screen fence, you
Yeah.
want
A privacy
a
fence.
piece of wood, privacy fence, all the way around?
Well, and then, I heard that there's a coyote problem in the area. So would now that increase the coyote problem? Would all of a sudden people have coyotes sitting at the chicken coop waiting for
There's a raccoon problem in the area, so I
There's a
wish
skunk
there was
problem.
a skunk problem, so I wish we had more coyotes. I think maybe they would take care of those, I don't know.
Yes.
So, what guidance are we giving staff to? I mean, it sounds like we're giving them guidance to,
I'd be interested to see Oak Park, what they're doing there. Spoke with a buddy of mine that lives there, and this topic came up, and he said they've allowed chickens for a long time, and it's never been a problem. So I'd be interested to
and
see how
Oak
they
Park
deal with
has
it.
lots that are more similar to our size.
Way smaller, yeah.
Yeah, and one,
They're
Well,
5 foot lots.
They're shorter, but I don't know that, I think they're wider, though. In some areas of Oak Park, I know that they're wider.
South Park, they're probably smaller than ours. 'cause
Yeah.
A lot of
On
them
the
are,
south side.
yeah.
So, and then maybe that's a good way for staff to get an idea about setbacks and so on from a smaller, community with smaller lots.
Do we ever
Yeah.
appoint subcommittees of this group, or is that something we don't do?
We have, but usually on something like this, we will have staff, because it's going to have to get written in a way that
Sure.
can be made into an ordinance. And usually what we do is staff looks at it, finds 2 or 3 that are similar, and we go through and we pick out the requirements that we think
Okay.
apply to Villa Park, and then staff writes up language. We then review, approve that language, and make a recommendation to the village board of, this is an ordinance we think you all ought to adopt.
Good.
So, so any guidance that's specific we can give staff at this point in time will make it easier, less time-consuming for them, and get us to that point of being able to make a recommendation.
So we are thinking of considering.
I'm hearing that the majority of people here tonight, if the ordinance was written right, would vote to recommend an ordinance to the board. Is that
For a year. Trial.
as a pilot
Yes.
program?
Yeah,
Yes,
pilot,
it's a
I
pilot
think, would
program.
There's
be a good
2,
start.
3,
Year might be too short, but
4.
but yes, a pilot program.
No. Commissioner Orlowski, you wouldn't be in favor even of the pilot program, so that's 1. No. Commissioner
Yeah,
Gatto.
I'm not really in favor of
I mean, we're going to ask staff to spend time, so I don't want to go
Right.
through an exercise where our staff comes back after spending a bunch of time.
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
This commission kind of goes, thanks, but.
it. I mean, even if we did it a year or 2 years, it's not a lot of time. By the time this thing gets passed and people, get their chicken coops up and get permits and licenses, they're gonna be 6 months into it before.
How long was?
Yeah, I would agree. A year's not very.
No, I was thinking 3 minimum. Is what I was
Well,
thinking for a pilot. I mean, I don't know what Elgin did, but unless I'm looking now to see what it says.
How long did they do it for?
So I'm looking to see if it says.
Yeah, so, Lake Bluff gives a minimum lot size.
Yeah, pretty
It's
much.
got to be a single family.
I don't think we
Well-
we did not see an ordinance that didn't have some sort of setback requirement.
Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
And there should be.
They all required an enclosure.
But right now, it
Which is
looks like
necessary,
we're
obviously.
kind of split,
Well, maybe we could make a rule that they can't get
actually.
a setback variance with their
4-3.
chicken coop, right? But I think if people really want it, there's been enough interest and enough people here, I think that we should really at least consider it and give it a trial, give it some thought,
What's that?
put down some rules.
Who's for it on this board?
I am. I think the people want
Jarrett.
it. And we're here serving the people, aren't we?
So 4 and 3, so I guess
Right.
With
And,
one
and we
person
don't know
present.
the other
No.
members, the other member that's not here tonight may be for
I
it
don't-
as well.
if we were the other way around, if we were 3
For it?
for it and 4 against it, would we just say forget about it?
I would, but that's not where we are.
Yeah, all right. I just didn't know if we had an obligation to look into it.
So, Mr. Grill, any specific questions that you have then on guidance that you would need, other than what we've talked about?
I am thinking perhaps if you could reach some sort of consensus as to how long you want the pilot program for, what sort of restrictions you want on it, would there be a fee involved?
Yes.
And then actually go to the village board, and if the village board is interested, they can remand it back to
There you go.
the commission to hold the necessary public hearing and draft an ordinance that would address that.
There you go. I think that's
That's a great idea.
But I would want,
the way to do it.
I want some direction from you guys as to what you would like to see if this is going to be the case.
Yeah, some sort of consensus from the board would save.
Well, because if the board is going to go, no, I don't even want you to mess with it.
Well, correct.
Yeah.
It would behoove us to go
And
through.
I think that's
with it.
actually what, I think the board, before we could even do public hearings, it has to be remanded to us from the board. We can't just, we can't.
We can't make it up.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
pilot program, how long? That was his first question.
A year is not enough.
2 years?
Two?
I would think 2 or 3.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
2
We
years.
could with Jason's 3 if we.
Yeah, let's
We're
not
gonna
even
do it.
good.
You want to make it long?
I'm just saying, we could, 2 years might, everybody might not have their,
Well, but if you don't have
everything
your,
in place.
if you don't have your stuff in place in 2 years, I don't really.
Well, I don't think there's gonna be a mad rush to the.
No, I don't either, but 2 years.
Yeah, but 3 years, at least if they're gonna,
I think the majority of them already have the 2 years.
let them have 3 years to kick in to let them get some eggs out of it and get their money
It
back.
doesn't
at
take,
least for
it
their
doesn't
chicken.
take
Yeah.
that.
All I'm saying is, there's 15 people here right now that might be for it. Once they start putting chickens in their yard, it's gonna take 3 years for other people to have chickens in their yard. So a 2-year pilot program isn't really a good pilot program. Because it's
I
gonna
don't know if I
take,
understand the
it's
point.
gonna
Yeah,
take
neither.
longer. People aren't even aware of it, Until my neighbor has chickens,
And-
I'd be like,
Oh, I
we
want
could
to
do
There's-
chickens too,
Well,
yeah.
There's chick
Can,
season.
only if you,
You can't,
for limited number of
really
seats
start
in
it in the
pilot
middle of the
program.
year.
That's how I'm kind of
That's the
thinking
thing,
this
I
would
mean-
work.
You would limit that?
Yeah, the pilot program
then
would just
would
be
you
for like a
limit it?
select group of people to kind of test it out, so it wouldn't be open to
Yeah,
everyone.
if it's a pilot program,
Yeah,
there's a
it's
limited
a-
number
it's
of
a-
licenses.
It's a
Would you
controlled
limit
test.
the licenses?
So how many licenses?
But would you limit it? Let's say it became an ordinance. Would you still limit the number of licenses?
Elgin did a 1-year pilot program with 15 permitted residents, and a year later they authorized it, made it permanent.
So 2 years then is even more than what Elgin did for their pilot program.
Would we still limit the licenses?
Yes.
On the, for the pilot program?
I think you
yeah.
need to,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, you have to.
that's how you monitor.
Otherwise,
That's how
you've
you-
implemented it.
Theoretically,
right.
that's how you monitor what's going on.
But would you limit it once it becomes an ordinance?
No.
I wouldn't.
Then it's not a true pilot program. You know what I'm saying? You have no idea the impact on the town if you're only allowing 15 people doing something and you say, yeah, it's all right. And then you make it an ordinance and all of a sudden it's, 500
But
people have it.
the thing is, if you don't limit the pilot program, and then you decide not to make it permanent,
Yeah, yeah.
it becomes essentially impossible to undo.
Mhm.
I mean,
That's-
not impossible, but if you get 15
Highly
people,
unlikely.
if you get 15 people to sign
Highly
contracts
unlikely.
that say, if this pilot program doesn't work, we're not, you have to remove your stuff, that may be enforceable. If you have 200 people that have chosen to do it,
Okay, so let's go
then
back.
I don't think
1
there'd
year
be
or
the
2
political
years?
will.
2 years.
Let's go for
2
2.
years.
I'm okay with 2
How,
years.
okay,
And
How many licenses?
Licenses, and they're going to be free for the pilot program, right?
no.
No.
Why
Gotta
not?
pay. Because we're
Because
gonna incur
somebody's paying for it.
cost.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying for it.
This is, no, it's got a cost.
Yes.
Yep.
there's
So
a fee.
then, those people that already have chickens are actually gonna have to pay.
Wait a minute.
Nobody should
They
already
should
have chicken.
Oh, okay.
About-
They already have chickens.
Besides the one in your freezer, do you have some that?
Huh? I'm just saying, I eat chicken.
If it
I like it,
doesn't
it's
seem
good.
to you.
I throw
Okay,
chicken
so
around.
This started because
let's
somebody
let's
had chickens.
focus because I don't want to be here
Alright,
all night.
let's go 2 years and let's give out 20.
No,
License.
no, no,
15.
no. 15
For a fee.
for a fee.
Right.
Are we gonna put a cap on the number of chickens?
Yes.
3
The,
chickens.
the license I'm looking at says 4 chickens.
4? I'm down with that.
I don't know.
There's 2 to 3 is a minimum that you,
Yeah.
I mean, 2 to 3 is a minimum you have to have to
This
to
is,
be
I think,
successful.
is this Elgin with the
That's Bartlett.
That's
Bartlett's?
Bartlett. The numbers
Stupid.
ranged everywhere from 2 to like 8, but there was nothing more.
2
than
to
that.
8, nothing
So,
more than 8.
Yeah, so 4 or 5 is a reasonable number.
What's the number of
think.
chickens?
4.
I got 5 fingers. I'll just
5.
Now he's making chicken fingers. Okay.
He'll be leading us to the chicken dance pretty soon.
4 is that consensus? 4?
Or
Yeah, it's fine.
no roosters.
No roosters.
No rooster. I think some of the.
Yeah.
Here's what I would
Elgin
say.
is
Some
4.
of the specific things that
We'll talk
are
about breeds later.
like
yeah.
no roosters and that from these other ordinances. You'll know to carry those
No
off.
roosters is a no-brainer, and everybody here
Okay.
said for sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I get? What? Okay. So those are the first numbers you asked for. What else did you ask?
Lot setbacks.
Setbacks.
Setbacks. So
Yes.
setbacks. 50-foot lot.
Yeah. that's
So
what I
let's
was
talk about
thinking.
side yard setbacks.
15 minimum?
15 feet.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'm okay with 15 feet.
Yeah, but that'd be in the perfect
Alrighty,
world,
that-
I would
that
have it right
allows
in
you
the
to-
center of
on a
my
50
backyard, but what if my landscaping, I have a tree that won't allow it?
Then you have to
10
adapt.
feet.
You don't-
Maybe.
so you don't
Decision
have
time.
Your lot doesn't work.
Decision
15
time,
feet.
Farmer Jackson.
All right.
15 foot.
Yeah. Okay.
On a 50-foot lot, that gives you 20 feet to build a
Okay.
chicken.
So rear yard setback.
15 feet again.
15 feet again.
Not, yeah.
From a structure,
Yeah.
from the lot line, not from the
From the
structure.
lot
On
line.
the lot line.
These are all from lot lines. Okay. Permitted in the front yard.
No.
No?
Only if the side loading.
Permitted in a side yard.
No.
No. Corner lots all have designated front yard and side yards, but you can have what you end up having is a front yard on one of the sides usually. So it means if you have a corner lot, in some ways you have less usable rear yard space. That's really what it
Yeah.
means.
The
I have a corner
ordinance-
lot too, and that's what it means.
So do I. You have a corner side yard, which usually is deeper than a typical side yard,
But you could still put a coop in as long as you haven't filled your rear yard with a garage and a shed. So then lot coverage, there's no increase in lot coverage, right? You still have to meet the lot coverage requirements of our ordinance.
Yep.
Right?
That's what I would say, yes.
I would
Yeah.
say so.
Consensus is yes?
Yes.
For the- yeah.
What about the movable chicken?
What about
coops
the structure? Like,
that are on wheels?
now we have multiple structures. Are we gonna allow a garage, a shed, a house, and a chicken coop, or,
As long as they meet all of the other requirements.
so we're gonna allow? a
So
fourth
if you
garage
have a
or-
maximum garage and your maximum shed, you won't be able to build a chicken coop.
But what if you're under the max?
Then you can build a chicken coop.
And you have a garage and a shed.
That's what that's what my
Still
point
allow
is if
chicken
I've
coop?
got my maximum garage size by ordinance, and I have my maximum shed size by ordinance, I can't build a coop. I'm gonna have to make my shed smaller.
What if people want to retrofit a shed that they have in a
You
chicken
have to
coop?
renovate.
Then what?
Well, pertinent to this discussion is, we limit everyone to only one accessory structure, not including garages, in their rear yards.
Right.
So they really, if you're gonna say that what you're gonna do is make people choose between a shed or a chicken coop, or do you wanna say, we'll allow up
Your
to
aggregate
two-
of those two can only be the 750 or whatever. How many square feet is a
There.
shed?
I agree with that.
150? I forget what's the maximum shed size.
120 square feet.
I agree with that.
In the aggregate, you could have two of these structures. You could have a shed and a coop But they
Okay.
As
can't,
long as your total accessory structure area does not exceed 120 feet.
consensus?
Consensus.
Yeah,
No.
I think that's
I
fair.
say one accessory structure, period.
Okay, but what is everybody
fair.
else is in consensus with what?
That's fair, yeah.
Sorry, you lose.
I'm just telling you my
There you-
thoughts.
I think, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I think this gives at least people a reasonable chance to, because a lot of people, their garage is full of stuff and they don't have any place for their lawnmowers and stuff, so they want to have a shed. So I think this is pretty fair so far. Okay, so that's setbacks, lot coverage,
Do we,
accessory structure.
on the setbacks, a number of the ordinances have a minimum setback from residential units on other properties. Is that something we want to consider?
Yes, because just like what we were talking about tonight, you could be 15 feet away from that house that's, right?
I think Naperville's was 200, which is
Yeah,
probably
there's no
too
way.
much for
No,
us,
no.
but
15 feet again?
That's pretty close.
Well, if you have to be
Well,
15 feet
if
from
it
the
could
lot
be-
line,
yeah, that's,
It
15
should
feet
be
from-
all right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
we need a special thing for that. I think the 15 feet does a pretty good job. All right. What else?
coops and chicken runs.
So, you know,
Maximum
one of
coop
these
size.
one of these talked about how well, if you only have 4 chickens, how big does it need to be?
Well, this one's stating it's six
chicken
square
run.
feet per chicken.
yeah, most of them set a minimum size of indoor and outdoor space per chicken. What the specifics are of each one, I don't know off the top of my head.
So, is that something that?
We can call from another ordinance.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Is that something we can take from another ordinance? But this big giant chicken run. Did you guys see the picture of this thing? This thing?
Yeah, that's,
That's for like, that's for Villa
I mean,
Park
that should
Estates or
count as
something.
your accessory structure size too.
Oh, big chickens.
That's like a penthouse.
Can't imagine that. That's taller than a fence.
Yeah,
That would be a no for me.
that would be a no too.
Taller than your fence. So what? What? Was there one of these that had a specific size that we can just grab onto? And I don't think we have to.
Get into
With
that.
under Director Girl's scenario there, we don't have to have the perfect ordinance at this point. We just have to have the sketches of the outlines of the kind of some of the parameters so the board can get a feeling of, okay, this could be an organized approach to this. It's not going to be everybody making their own decision about how this is going to be done in their own yard. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Got to get a building permit, right? How about visibility from the street? Do we want to say it can't be visible from the street?
Well, then that just knocks out everybody's got a side yard.
No,
Side
because you
yard.
can build a
We said it was
fence.
for the backyard only,
Ah.
so-
What about a fence? Should they be required to have a fenced-in yard?
Or a chicken run.
This other ordinance is calling it a coop and a fenced area, known as a pen.
yeah, Batavia requires a minimum of 32 feet of fenced outdoor area. So that's, I mean, you're gonna have that. You're gonna have a coop and
Oh, this one says 10 square feet per hen.
of outdoor space or in
No,
total.
it's total. Not more than 50 square feet. They must allow 5 then.
Bartlett is 6.
Square feet per
Yeah.
hen.
Outdoor area.
You gotta have screening to 6 foot.
Which eliminates the need for a fenced-in yard, right?
Go with the
Yes.
6, right?
Yes, 6, because.
And then solid screening.
I don't know if I agree with the solid screening. I don't know.
Okay, you don't agree with solid screening. What does everybody else
Depends on the
think?
situation. Like,
Solid screening. What do we think? Consensus?
For a fence in, you mean the yard?
Or just around the unit itself?
Oh, okay.
Not saying that it has to be the
Oh.
whole yard.
okay. All right.
That's the way this one reads.
That works too.
Yeah, I'd say solid screening.
And again, we can decide later on if it's the whole yard, but this one isn't talking the whole yard. They're just saying solid screening around the coop and the run, and they called it again the pen. The coop and the pen. They didn't call it a run.
I don't want my chickens to be raised in the dark. I'm just joking around a little bit.
We'll put a spotlight on them. Suspension,
Look how he's conceding
revocation. I think, we obviously have a suspension and revocation section. I don't know if that,
A suspension of what?
and/or revocation. So if someone isn't complying,
Yes.
anything else that we think we need to, Director Grill, anything else?
Do you want to limit the height of a coop
Oh, yeah.
So
to
6 foot, right?
6 foot.
maximum? Okay.
That's what it looks like.
Maximum.
A couple of these are 6 foot.
What were you gonna say?
I had a question. You mentioned about the movable ones.
Uh-huh.
Does that have to be a fixed fixture?
There was one of them that talked about them being movable.
If it is, I don't want to issue a permit for it.
If it's movable?
Yes,
Yep, they're on wheels.
we
And
don't.
Most of them require a building permit to build a coop. And like, if you look at Batavia's code, they have very specific,
How it has to be built.
My only concern, if you allow it to be movable, it's going to be very hard to ensure that it stays 15 feet away
Setbacks,
from.
yeah. Okay, so,
Fixed structure.
yeah, I mean, like Batavia's requires a concrete foundation and
Footings and everything, see it?
so what's consensus? Movable structures or fixed?
Fixed.
You're gonna show me a really cool movable one that looks like an Airstream trailer. And I'm really not gonna care.
No, I'm just saying, there's a reason that they're movable too, So, I mean, they still look good, they're movable.
But if we're gonna ask it to be 15 feet, it's gonna get moved. It doesn't look bad, what you're showing me.
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't an Airstream trailer.
it looks
but-
better than that one you showed me that was pretty permanent.
Oh, yeah, that one that's permanent, that was ridiculous looking. Okay. So consensus, staff needs direction on this. Movable, not movable, fixed?
Fixed.
Fixed, fixed,
I'd
two
need it to be
fixed,
fixed to get behind it.
3 fixed,
Fixed.
fixed. Okay, fixed. Consensus is fixed. Okay?
Then let me read this back to you just to make sure that we'll have a pilot program for 2 years, up to 15 licenses. There would be a fee, up to 4 chickens, no roosters, setbacks 15 feet from a side yard, 15 feet from a rear yard, located in rear yards only. No increase in lot coverage for accessory structures beyond what currently exists. Must get a building permit. It must be surrounded by a 6-foot solid fence around the coop and the pen. There should be a suspension and revocation clause, maximum coop height of 6 feet, and it's a fixed structure.
Yeah, my only, yes, that's what we said.
No, I disagree with the 6-foot fence though.
I know you do, but they're not,
too,
we don't all agree with everything.
But no,
Well, my only point would be, you look at those structures, they've got screens to allow the chicken run, the
Okay,
chicken see some light.
so the 6-foot fence, solid fence, is if you don't have any fences in your backyard. If you want to put a solid fence around your perimeter backyard and then put it right in the middle, I'd be okay with you not having a 6-foot fence. So it's probably got to get refined, but this is just a sketch of the kinds of things we'd be talking about to regulate this use, right? And it's got to go through a public hearing process, and there's going to be changes, and that's how you would articulate it to the board,
Correct.
right?
So to be clear then, the fence is gonna be around the chicken coop, not the chicken run.
It's,
I was just curious. I want to be clear.
Chicken coop, the way that it was being discussed, chicken coop and chicken run can't be visible from another property,
All right.
Bingo.
essentially,
That's
if you're
what,
standing at 6 feet tall.
that's what we're going for. And that seemed to be consensus.
Yes.
I know that Commissioner Jackson, you didn't agree with that particular requirement,
Hey,
but.
no, I'll
don't
deal with it. I
think
just
either,
think
but-
that's kind of cool.
But I know there's consensus.
Right, there's consensus, so, okay. All right, so we've given staff then enough direction so they can go to the board and say, this is what planning and zoning has been taking a look at based on members of our community coming in and asking us to consider it. So then if the village board doesn't send it back to us, then it'll end there. If they send it back to us, then we'll need to do public hearings and set up with staff. But I think this is enough direction for you to maybe pull a couple of more and then start writing if board directs you to do so.
Yes, yep. And more than likely, we'd have another, we'd probably workshop it before we'd actually hold, to publish a public hearing.
Yeah.
So that we knew exactly what we're having the public hearing on and what exactly in the code was being modified.
Right, and I know there were some members of the public, a couple I see here, some that I don't see here, who were more intimately familiar with chickens than,
Yeah, and it might be good to workshop it and
and the
find out.
requirements
Yep.
that make sense. and
Right,
those that
yeah,
don't.
get
Yep,
somebody
what,
from the.
what makes it
who knows
viable
what they're
and
talking about.
healthy environments for the chickens. Okay. Are we done with chickens? We're done with
so.
chickens. Okay. So, upcoming public hearings? Sorry, I'm jumping right ahead.
That's okay, that's fine.
The middle of the night for me right now.
Yes, there will be a public hearing next month. It'll be a variance,
Okay.
parking. And that is likely the only one.
Okay. Any village board actions and related matters you need to tell us about?
Because of various issues that have been in front of the village board over the last month and in the coming month, the new zoning ordinance probably will not go before the board probably until sometime in April at the
Okay.
earliest.
Commissioner comments? All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We're adjourned.